worried about the Celtics, though. Lost 3 out of 4 coming into Tuesday after having won 6 in a row. There's a lot of chirping about, like, what's wrong? And we talk a lot about Tatum, and you talk about Grant Williams, and you talk about Jalen. And now folks are starting to focus a little bit less on what's happening on the court and a little more on the sideline, specifically Brad Stevens. His name has been one that has been used in vain lately by Celtics fans and Celtics Nation. Not sure if it's all warranted, but it feels as though there's a different vibe now with this team under Brad's leadership than there was previously. What are you thinking about Brad and just kind of where he stands in the eyes of Celtics Nation?
It's definitely a tricky situation because, to your point, people love to put the blame on someone. It's either Danny, it's either Coach Stevens. Obviously, the players are always going to get slack. I don't even know who to blame at this point, and it's unfair. It's one of those things where you either just blame everyone or it's just not a functioning ship, essentially. I'm not really sure if he has – I don't know. It's one of those things where obviously he's the coach, but at the end of the day, he's not the one on the floor. And there are a lot of adjustments that you have to make as a player when you realize that you're down in games as well. So it's tricky because I do think that there is definitely a level of coaching that maybe he's not getting to his players or whatever the case is. Obviously, we don't know. But I don't want to put all of blame on him because I do think that's unfair when you look at this squad, and it's not all on him. He's not the one out there missing shots.
No, he's not. But I do think, though, that we're starting to see more of isn't so much blame, Brad, but they want to see more accountability for why things aren't working from Brad. And it's one thing for him to say that, I got to do a better job, but it's a completely different thing when it's like, well, why aren't you doing a better job? We're damn near at the end of the regular season, and the issues that we're talking about with this team, like effort and focus and guys not just picking up on things as quickly as they should, those are things that we shouldn't be having those conversations at this point in the season. This team has shown the ability to be consistently inconsistent. Their effort has been questionable, and they're consistent with that. And yes, that certainly is a player thing, but there's a coaching component to that struggle too. And I don't know if Brad has figured out exactly how to get more out of what he's working with. And I know they've been hit as hard as anyone by COVID and health and safety protocols, and you've had some guys injured, but the guys who do play, you don't get the sense that they're stepping up. And it's either because they're not making the most of the opportunities they're getting, or they're not getting enough opportunities to make the most of them. But there is a clear disconnect between what Brad and his staff wants guys to do and what they're actually doing. And whether that is totally on Brad, totally on the players, is more likely somewhere in the middle. I do like the fact that there's a greater sense of having Brad be among those who should be accountable for this team being so bad. We far too often put it on the players, and they deserve it because they're literally the ones out there not getting it done. But let's not pretend that the coach has nothing to do with that, and yet we're the first ones to prop him up when things are going great and the team is winning. You can't have it both ways. And I think Brad understands that. And I think Celtics Nation and Celtics fans are starting to embrace that, but that doesn't make it any easier or more comfortable for anyone involved.
Agreed. Great point.
So let me ask you this, Kwani. We've talked about the problems. We talked about Brad. We talked about things not quite being where they should be. Where's your level of concern / panic? And by that, I mean, like, a 1 would be like, we're good, none to see here. Let's keep it moving. 10, we need to blow this thing up. We need to get rid of the whole enchilada. Where are you in that range?
I would say I'm at a 4 because I'm not necessarily neutral on them, obviously. And the reason why I still lean more towards they're okay, so to speak, is because I do realize that playoff basketball is different and there's a different pace. And a lot of the players on that team Kemba last year was finally able to get his first playoff win. So he even can say he's been in that kind of experience of what playoff basketball is. And so at this point, the regular season, I'm over it. I definitely don't see that as what we expected overall. But if they're able to and willing to step up for playoff ball the way that they have in the past, then I'd be like, okay, you know what? I could see them making it pretty far. But until I see maybe the first 2 playoff games, I'm still not sold necessarily, even though I know they have the tools to be successful. They need to tap into that.
Yeah. I mean, I would put them at a 3. And I say that because even if they were healthy, good to go, all that good stuff, they're what, 3rd, 4th best team in the East, and they're now at 6. So it's not like there's this huge drop off from where they are and where they could theoretically be if they were playing very good basketball. I think so many things have to go their way and for them to really be a top 2, top 3 team in the East. And it's been just the opposite. Very few things have worked out for them. So I'm not that worried because I think they're not that far from where they should be. Now, as you pointed out, Kwani, they got a lot of guys with a lot of playoff experience who understand how different the game changes once you get past that regular season. And hopefully the Celtics will be able to tap into that they'll figure out a way to, kind of dig deep and rise up and do the kind of things that we've seen them do in past years. Am I confident that they're going to do that? No, hell no, because I haven't seen a lot in the regular season that would make me feel confident. But I do know that is in them. I do know that they have that potential, but I am nowhere close to like hitting the panic button or anything like that on this team. And you know who else isn't hitting the panic button these days? The freaking Charlotte Hornets.
Oh, absolutely.
Who handed Boston the beat down on over the weekend. And the Celtics, they'll get a chance to see them again later on this week. Exactly. And we'll dig into what's clicking for the Hornets, as well as the former Celtics, who are now Charlotte Hornets, and their impact on that, as we have a good conversation with Rick Bonnnell, longtime beat writer with the Charlotte Observer. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Rick, how's it going, my friend? How you been?
It's been a really interesting year. I think I'm speaking for every single NBA beat writer when I say that while we've traveled less than we have for any season, I think we're all more tired than we've ever been before.
We're all zoomed out in so many ways. It's not even – I used to think that the concept of just having like this kind of already prepackaged amount of time and visibility with players would be a good thing. But then you realize it's not, because you're only getting a couple of players and you're sharing them with like 25, 30 people every single day. You get no me time. Not crazy about that. But I tell you what,
an unstructured, intimate conversation is so hard.
It is. Yeah. It is. And the ones I've had, it's very different. It's very different. And you know how it is in Boston. I mean, there's 1,000,001 media members, and now there's 1,000,001 media members on Zoom. So yeah. I tell you what hasn't been an issue. Your Charlotte Hornets. That beatdown that they put on Boston over the weekend. I mean, where did that come from? It was only just like 3 weeks ago, where Boston beat them by like 30.
I think the most remarkable thing about that was not that they beat the Celtics by 25, but they actually got to 100 points in 3 quarters. I mean, since LaMelo has left, and the term that James Borrego uses to describe LaMelo, he calls LaMelo their engine in the sense of what they do offensively. When you lose LaMelo and Gordon Hayward and Malik Monk, for each of them for at least a month, actually, each of them, for probably a little more than a month. I mean, your offense is so handicapped that they've had 6 games in recent memory when they haven't gotten to 98 points.
Oh, wow! And they put a C note in 3 quarters against the Celtics. I don't know if that's like them doing really well offensively or the Celtics defense is that trash right now.
The Celtics seem to think that game tipped off at 4.
Well played.
And the Celtics are very familiar with a guy going by the nickname of Scary Terry. How has he been for the Charlotte Hornets, and how have you seen him grow in his time there so far?
You know that horrible expression that we all laugh at when coaches say, so-and-so is an even better human being than he is a player.
Yeah. So corny.
He really is.
Yeah.
He's exactly the person you want to be the center of your locker room. I was saying to Sherrod before we started taping, the thing that's so cool about Terry is They have asked him to change his job description at least 5 times in 1.5 seasons. And every single time his only reaction was to shrug and go, I got this, coach.
Yeah, I miss him so much. I ain't gonna lie. For me and Terry got to know each other a little bit in summer league out in Vegas, when basically nobody really gave a damn about who this dude was. And I just remember we would just sit down and have these normal like conversations that had very little to do with basketball, but you could tell that this was a guy that you really wanted in your squad. And like I was telling Rick before, if he could just be like, marginally decent, an NBA player, everyone's gonna love this dude. And so it took something of the likes of a Kyrie Irving for the Celtics to be comfortable kind of letting him go. But man, buyer's remorse big time when you think about
just how. But Charlotte was perfect for him. When you think about the development of his game, he was never going to get that real starting experience. So I'm sure you could speak for me that Charlotte has been the perfect opportunity for him to really shine as the star that he wants to be.
While I agree with you, I would say that his success here has been more a function of his adaptive nature. Supposedly he was coming here to replace Kemba as the point guard.
Right.
10 games into his first season here, it was obvious that Devonte Graham was just blowing up.
Right.
And they asked Terry to facilitate that by being a shooting guard. He does that extremely well. They draft LaMelo Ball, and all of a sudden now you don't just have one alternative primary ball handler, you have 2 alternative primary ball handlers. Terry has, like I said, when I talk about all the different things he's been asked to do, he has often been asked to be their first defensive option on the perimeter. That changed a little bit because Cody Martin has improved, but the bottom line of the situation is they keep asking him to do something new every 20 or 30 games, and his reaction is just, okay, whatever, I got it. He was perceived as being overpaid with what the Hornets had to do to get him, and now he looks very underpaid.
It's funny how that happens.
Happened with a guy they drafted a long time ago named Kemba Walker.
Yeah.
Not quite so much now, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's another Celtic in the Hornets nest, so to speak.
Is there?
Terrible pun. Terrible pun on my part, by the way. Terrible pun.
You went to Syracuse and came up with that.
I know. I did the alma mater bad on that one. I really did. But Gordon Hayward, though, I mean, we that's someone, and you know this, Rick, that's someone that Michael has had his eye on for quite a while.
Yes.
And what has he brought to the table? I mean, obviously he's hurt now, but when he was healthy, what were some of the things that made him someone that really helped this team be in the position they're in now, which is one of the better teams in the East?
When healthy, if you only take that segment, Gordon has been exactly what they paid him to be. This team needed an organizer. It needed a connector. It needed a guy who could get you out of late shot clock situations. I thought it was really interesting. I've got to know Ron Norwood really well. I know that he used to be with the Celtics organization.
Yeah.
Ron has a unique perspective on this because he was Gordon's point guard at Butler. Right. So he is now an assistant coach here and a guy who used to roam with Gordon on the road at Butler. I thought that Ron put this so well before the season. Gordon was a double engineering major at Butler. He has that point of view in life. He's a calculator. Mm-hmm. Ron said to me, don't talk about him as a scorer. Don't talk about him as a passer. Talk about him as a decision maker. Talk about him as a guy who can be surrounded by a bunch of young guys still trying to figure out how to play. And this guy, 9 out of 10 times, will make the decision, whatever it is, that will give you the best fighting chance of a possession to get out of it with points. In that regard, he's been really good here. I think that the only thing that they need to worry about, and this is just a natural thing when you pay this much money for a 30-something free agent, are the last 2 years of that contract going to look cost-effective? It's, in some ways, you could say it's kind of comparable to what the commitment the Celtics made with Kemba. Kemba is a human pinball. He has to play that way to be effective. Inevitably, he's going to get hurt, and he showed up in the Celtics door with some knee problems already. in the same sense, you have to wonder if the best of those guys is going to be at the front end of very long, very expensive contracts.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly like around here. That's really the issue with Kemba. It's not so much how he's playing, but the fact that he doesn't play as regularly as you want, and it's all directly tied in with his health. And you're right, Rick. I mean, it does become something that becomes very problematic near the end of the contract, because then if you're thinking about moving that player, you're going to get less in return because everyone knows you're trying to move that guy.
Right.
If you can even get a buyer.
Well, we've talked a lot about basketball, but there's obviously, on a less lighter note, the shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. And over the last year, we've seen a lot of, obviously, social activism from the players in the NBA. And I was just curious, from your perspective, how do you think it's affected some of the Charlotte players, and what have you seen overall when it comes to the social justice movements that they've been making?
I have not talked to the players specifically about what's happening lately in Elizabeth City. I will tell you that the entire state, I think it's fair to say, is really upset about that, partially because there's a really strange law in this state that does not give automatic access to body cams, and that's really unfortunate. But I will tell you that the driver of social activism around the Charlotte Hornets is actually from the very top. Michael Jordan's been really interesting in that regard. He pledged $100 million over the next 10 years, along with Jordan Brand, to deal with causes. A lot of it voter activation, a lot of it helping small businesses. But the other thing that I thought was really interesting is, it got very trendy last summer for NBA teams to start providing arenas as mass voting sites. The Hornets were way out ahead on that. The Hornets started a plan on that way before it was trendy. I think literally Sacramento and maybe the Pistons were the only other teams that were that proactive about that part of it. And it's been a really cool thing to see. The Hornets, we can talk all day about what's good and bad about this franchise. They have always been good corporate citizens in recent memory, and they're an asset to Charlotte in that way.
Yeah, I mean, Michael has really, I think, forced people to reevaluate the narrative as it relates to him and his activation with social justice causes. When you look at just not so much the talk, but the actual walk that he has had of late when it comes to, frankly, being part of the solution and not on the sidelines. So absolutely tip your hat off to Michael Jordan. He's doing what should be done on so many levels. So
absolutely. He's gotten a lot of slack, obviously, in the past for the lack of maybe activism as a player, but it was a different era of basketball. And I think the fact that he's been able to adapt to the fact that it is more okay to speak out against injustices, I think that's a great way to use the platform. So
I think voting access is a really cool thing to address. But the other thing, that they've been involved with for years, because they went out and they looked for real needs in the community. And one of the things they discovered was food issues. They've been very, very involved with food banks and food deserts. Michael has funded 2 free clinics with the hospital unit that sponsors the Hornets. I mean, they basically said, we're going to build 2 clinics that the vast majority of the medical care is free in underserved neighborhoods in Charlotte. That's, like you said, that's not just talking right. That's doing things that have real tangible impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Kwani, you took us down this. Yeah, lighten the load, Kwani. Let's have some fun. Come on.
With some games. I'm not sure if Sherrod told you, but we play games on this podcast. So now you have to play because you've already made it this far into the episode.
There's no turning back.
Sorry. So the first game, it's a new one. It's called Shoot Your Shot. And you have 1 shot to win a championship. And you either have Terry Rozier or Kemba Walker. Who are you taking and why?
Well, now that's interesting, because if you were asking me, I don't want to get too technical, but I mean, if you were talking about someone creating a shot, then I might say Kemba. Right. But I will tell you that Terry has nerves of steel. I don't know, I was talking to an NBA scout, a player personnel guy who was at a lot of Hornets games, who doesn't work for the Hornets. And I said, what do you know about Terry Rozier that you didn't know before? And it was interesting. The guy said, he's as fearless as anybody in this league. What I'm saying is, there are a lot of people in this league who, no matter how good they are, they don't want the ball hitting their hands with 5 seconds left in the game. And Terry isn't just comfortable with that. He embraces it. So, if somebody's got to hit a 20-foot jump shot, and my house is up for grabs, it would be Terry.
I'm going to go against you there.
Really?
That was a great summation of why Terry would be a guy. Yeah. But I'm going to go with Kemba simply because Kemba has been down that road before. Kemba has delivered big shots and big moments before. And I look at the trajectory of his season. If there's anyone who's due to have a game in which they deliver that type of dagger, it's Kemba Walker. And it's not as if we're talking about a guy who hasn't played at a high level before. I honestly believe if it came down to one shot to win a game and it was in Kemba's hands, I take Kemba just because the experience and the fact that just the odds are in his favor of making that shot because he hasn't had a lot of opportunities like that. And when he hasn't always delivered the way he needs to. And his health, I think, at that point will be significantly better than it is at the present time.
Sherrod, would you agree with me that Kemba's gift in those situations is more ability to create the space to get off a good shot, where Terry's more is the steely nerves to, hey, that ball's going to go through the net whether it did last time or not?
Yeah, Terry's got that. I don't give a damn if I'm 0 for 17. Yes, if we can win, I'm taking it.
Right.
Whereas Kemba,
I love Kemba's creativity with the ball to create space. It's
right. I think with Kemba, if he's like 0 for 16 and it's the game's on the line, he's going to create enough space to get a good look. Whereas Terry, it doesn't matter if he's got enough space; he's still going to take that shot. Yeah. We got more games, Connie, right?
We have more games, and this one's another new one. We call it "Who's Got the Props," as in prop bets. So most dunks between Jaylen Brown and Miles Bridges. Who do you have?
And we're talking about the game coming up.
Yeah. Most dunks for a season?
For the game coming up this on Thursday.
Jaylen will probably have more dunks, but Miles will have the most memorable.
Oh, that's that's another Syracuse one.
Oh my gosh, I gotta leave.
Out of the day.
I gotta leave. Get me out of here.
You know what? I think Miles is going to have more dunks because Miles, I just think, is wired for that part of his game. The thing I like about Miles is when he dunks, it's like an earthquake that is coming, and it's going to register before it actually lands. When he takes off, if you're in his runway, bye-bye, you're getting dunked on. Jaylen has more finesse to it, but I think Miles, there's going to be just more opportunities because, and the other thing too, and we didn't get into this, I just think Charlotte will do a better job defensively and not allow Jaylen to get too many dunks. Where I don't think the Celtics will do a good job defensively because that's just not who they are this year. So I like Miles to get a few more dunks.
One of the things, I did this really long takeout on Miles recently, and one of the things that I talked to him and people around him about is the emotional impact of those baskets beyond 2 points. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting. Borrego, who I think of as not clinical, but somebody who's very technical in nature, JB said, oh my God, he goes, I've seen the effect. He said, when he does that to the other team, he said, there's about 5 minutes when I know that it's not only affecting my team, it's affecting their team.
Yeah. It really does feel like, an earthquake just happened in your backyard and you've got to reassess where are all the paintings. I got to clean up this glass. You're not thinking about, what you're supposed to be thinking about. That dunk has that impact. I enjoy watching him play. And he's another one of those kids.
He's dramatically more he's become a dramatically more impactful all-around player. I thought it was interesting when Borrego said that Miles has reached a level in the last 20 games that he never anticipated him getting to this season. You don't often hear a coach acknowledge that.
No. It's usually, of course, I knew he'd be that great with my coaching and my tutelage and my. He's a great player. Wow, good for JB. Good for JB.
So the next one is, who will have the most made 3-point shots? Is it Jason Tatum or is it Terry Rozier?
Probably Tatum, because if I were Jason Tatum after what happened Sunday, I'd have a mat on going into that game.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was like Thanos snapped his fingers around Jason before that game.
That's good, actually.
I like that.
I couldn't get over that.
Yeah. I agree. I think Tatum is going to have a big game. I think Tatum is going to be angry Tatum. I think we're going to see Tatum after talking to Kendrick Perkins. Tatum, that guy was really good. I think we'll see him resurface next time, because even though the Celtics will have played obviously a game since they played Charlotte, that's going to be fresh in their minds. They didn't just lose; they got their asses kicked. And now they're coming to you, and now you get a chance to almost amend yourself for that. And I expect a big game from Tatum.
The other thing I'm curious about with that rematch, I don't know what was up with Evan Fournier. I mean, he just wasn't there. Did they
Stop.
You know what I'm saying?
Evan, no way.
I got a feeling Evans do.
Well, let's put it this way. He was 0 for the game, and since he's been a Celtic, it wasn't the first time he was 0 for the game. So to me, yet he had another game where he couldn't miss. So he has literally been the epitome of feast or famine. I wouldn't be surprised if he went off and had like 25 points on 10 for 12 shooting. Right. Wouldn't be surprised if he had a big fat donut and was 0 for 10.
Exactly.
I'm looking for that first shot. The first shot that he takes is going to tell me everything I need to know.
Yeah.
If that shot goes in, big night. If that shot doesn't go in, more the same. It's a wrap.
Right. And finally, who's going to have the bigger stat line, points, rebounds, assists between Marcus Smart and PJ Washington?
Oh, that's not even close. It's PJ. Oh. PJ is on a ridiculous run right now. And listen, I'm as Sherrod can confirm, I'm one of those people who thinks that defense is beautiful. I told Sherrod a year and a half ago that I think that Marcus Smart is one of the most undervalued people in the league because he does something different from what everybody else in the Celtics does. Mm-hmm. But as far as putting up numbers, PJ's been crazy since he came back from that ankle sprain.
This will be a really tough one because he's right. Normally if we had this conversation like maybe 3 months ago, it would be a no-brainer. Marcus would win. But PJ has been putting up ridiculous numbers. But damn it, I'm rolling with Smart Boy. I'm gonna roll with Marcus. I think that he's gonna have a Tatum. I think he's gonna have one of those Tatum moments where it's like, I gotta make an impact. I've got to do more than I'm doing. I think they're gonna win that game. I think Marcus is gonna have a big game. But it's hard for me to go against these Charlotte guys because I like them. I love Miles. I love PJ. I love T. Rose. I love Gordon. I love all those guys. But I think Marcus is going to have a bigger game than PJ, though.
I did not see starting PJ at center as being a thing that was going to end well. And it really has. I mean, what it's done is he is so shorthanded right now that it has allowed him to get his best players in the court, however they arrange it. The most interesting thing about James Borrego, about 3 weeks into him being the coach here, I asked him if there was anything about the way he looks at life that would affect his coaching. Mm-hmm. And I got this startling answer where he said that he never, ever, when he looks back on being a head coach, wants to look at himself as reactionary. He said, I'm not going to be one of these people who's obsessed with scouting reports. I'm not going to be this person who changes my lineup every single game because of who I'm playing. What that has meant is he's very unorthodox. He wants to put other people in predicaments, and sometimes that blows up in his face. But what I'm saying is he is going to do what he thinks works with his roster, And then he tells the other coach, whatever you do to bust that up, that's your business, but I'm going to go with my guys. And that's really, Sherrod, would you agree with me that there's way too much conformity in NBA coaching?
It is. I mean, everyone is trying to react as opposed to be proactive with what they do. We've seen a bit of that here in Boston lately, and it's not pretty. But the thing I like about JB though is that he has a philosophy, and he hasn't really deviated from you. When you start looking at, and Rick, I know you know the numbers better than any of us, but when you start looking at just the way his teams play and the guys that he plays and the roles that he has them embracing, there's not a whole lot of deviation from that. Whereas some games in Boston, you might see Grant Williams playing the small ball 5. Other times you might see him switched out where he's guarding Terry Rozier. And sometimes that stuff is sort of kind of by design, which leaves you scratching your head. Why would you do that? It's refreshing to see that.
I'm going to say something from afar, and I want to know if you two people who are up close agree or disagree. I don't think Brad likes his team. I think that roster makes him uncomfortable. I think it doesn't. He's not really sure if it all fits together. I thought that there was zero chance that he'd take a college job just because nobody in his right mind is going to leave an NBA job for a college job. But when people would ask me if there's any chance he would listen if North Carolina came calling, I said, well, I just don't think Brad particularly likes his team right now. Am I wrong in that notion?
I don't think he likes the way they're playing as a team. And I think part of his issue is he hasn't figured out why they're playing this way. And I think that there's a lot of frustration with that. But I think Brad is such a prideful guy that the idea of walking away with the job very much in a very messy state right now, I don't think his pride would let him feel comfortable walking away from that.
He doesn't want to start recruiting again because nobody in his right mind does, right?
Yeah, I'm still, and I love Mike Woodson. That's my guy. Love him to death. I would have stayed as an assistant in the NBA. I would have. The money might be better at Indiana, but all the things that you're going to have to do to earn that money at that particular school, nah. Being Tom Thibodeau's guy on the bench in New York, I'm all about that life. So
it's cleaner. It's Brad Daugherty does a weekly appearance on a radio show down here, and Matt put it so well. He said 90% of being an NBA coach is coaching. 90% of being a college coach is not coaching. That's really well put.
That is well put, and I'm actually going to steal that and use that at some point down the road. I'll give Brad credit because that's what we do at Syracuse.
That was Matt. I misspoke. It was Matt. It was Matt Daugherty.
Matt Daugherty. Okay. Oh, the former UNC coach. Okay. I will give Matt Daugherty credit for that. Okay. But I will steal that.
That was well put. As Larry Brown said, really smart people see a good idea and steal it immediately.
Exactly.
Yes. And it was a really smart idea for us to have you on this week. This was great, Rick, man. I appreciate you, man. This was really good and really timely. And hopefully we'll get a better game when these Charlotte and Boston meet again later this week.
That game actually has stakes. When you think about it, I mean, I don't think that the Hornets can catch the Celtics in the standings, but do keep something in mind. If by some miracle the Hornets win that game in Boston, they would clinch another tiebreaker. They have tiebreakers over pretty much everybody who surrounds them in the in that ugly middle between 6 and 11.
Right. Yeah, no one wants that play-in game smoke this year. No one wants to be in 7 through 10.
I'll tell you what you really want to avoid. You want no part of playing the Wizards in a one-game series to get into the playoff draw. That team, there's an expression in tennis called a dangerous floater, which is a player that is not seeded in a major that you want no part of.
Yeah.
The Washington Wizards define a dangerous floater.
Absolutely.
You're coming with all these good analogies today. We just need to have you on every week.
Well, he went to a great school, Kwani. What do you expect?
He's gonna pull out that orange and blue T-shirt any second now.
See? And then I will lose.
You know it's not. You know it's always within arm's reach. You know it's always within arm's reach.
Oh my God, I have nothing.
Yep.
Rick Bonnnell,
Thank
Charlotte
you so
Observer. Thank you so much for your time, my friend. This was great. This was awesome. Appreciate it.